his name we pray. Amen. Okay, Ken.
Thank you, Keenan. So, whenever we study anything, whether it's in the Bible or whether it's about the community, it's always good to dispel a myth. So the myth we're dispelling today is that there really is a Mark Wollmershauser. So we can use third time's a charm. We can use everybody knows his name and either knew his dad or his grandpa. Or, anyway, so it's really good to have him. And I'm assuming everybody read his little bio that was in the. So I won't repeat that. But what I will urge you to do is when you're listening to Mark and you're thinking about questions that he brings to your mind, we want to be sure and ask those. And I'd just like for you to think of him as though he were our chief of police, because at some point he will either be our chief of police or he'll be somebody else's. He's that special. So welcome, Mark, to our Challengers class.
Ken, thank you. Is the volume good in here? Okay. I'm pretty loud, pretty boisterous, so it might get adjusted, but we'll get there. Again, appreciate the entry, a very, very kind piece at the end of that. Yes, I actually made sure I took all kinds of side roads, so I didn't run into any other problems getting here today. Last time I caught one of the three things that's all going around and all that, but the first time was the very realistic aspect of the job of a police officer. I woke up in the morning, started to have coffee, was going to slowly get ready for this, and get a notification because I was on staff duty, which at my rank, there's always someone on call to kind of act as the spearhead of the department on a major incident. And on that morning, I was supposed to be here with you all. An officer was training a brand new officer who had graduated out of the academy. And when I mean a brand new officer, I mean we had graduated a class the Friday before I was supposed to talk to you all. And nobody goes to, and so that's their last day of work. And their first day will either be Saturday night graveyard over or Sunday morning. And the officer in training, her first day was Sunday morning that day. They start at 6:30 in the morning. It's usually a very low-key couple of weeks, at least that's kind of the attempt of, okay, we're going to ease you into what it's like to be on the streets as a police officer. And she was with another phenomenal field training officer that we have, and could not have been with a better officer for all these events to have occurred. And so within the first 2 hours, they're patrolling the streets of Tulsa. And this field training officer, although we try to ease officers in training into all the things that they do, we still can't turn blind eyes to the obvious things that we need to take care of as police officers. And this excellent field training officer was like, we have to stop this car. And better not, I'm going to show you how to do a great car stop. So she stops this car. And as the car stop continues, the officer in training knows the field training officer knows there's something not right about this. And so it continues again. And eventually, they are in a full-blown fight on the ground at the back of a car. And the field training officer is laying on top of him, and knows he's got a gun. And during the fight, the guy is able to at least get to his gun and squeeze off a round. Shoots her in the foot. And you can see all this on camera, because again, we have dash cameras, we have body-worn cameras, and you can see all this transpiring, and she continues to stay in the fight. And now, though, she has to maintain this person, or else, because if she goes for her gun, she's going to have to let go of something, right? So she's trying to maintain all of this. So now it's on this officer who's on phase 1, day 1, hour 2 of being a sworn officer to save the life of her field training officer and protect any other citizens who might be by who's got this guy with a gun. And she does exactly what we've trained her to do in the worst case scenario, that you must use deadly force to protect the lives of of everyone around you. And sure enough, she did, and she saved the life of her field training officer. But immediately, again, you can see it on camera, the second they get him into custody, the second they get a gun away from him, they immediately start going into life-saving mode because we've taken care of everything. And so we train our officers to put on bandages, to put on chest seals, to stop bleeding aspects. And so immediately, not only did they save the life of the officer and any citizens that might have been at harm, they immediately saved his life too. And so that's what the very first time I was dealing with in that morning that I was unable to be here with you all. But that's the realistic aspects of this profession. So with all that said, yes, I've been here for 19 years as a Tulsa police officer. I'm born and raised in Tulsa, love this city, and am not just passionate about my profession, but passionate about policing in Tulsa, because it's my home. It's my wife's home. It's the home where we raise our kids. And other than going over to Stillwater for 4 years, go Pokes. Other than that, this is my town. And so what I wanted to talk to you today is that I think a lot of times policing in America gets broad brushed as this is all policing. And I really want to squash any narratives you may hear about what national news or other local news that you might hear about in other areas in the country say about their policing, because I was shocked to find out when I hear reports about what goes on in other departments around this country. I'm like, nah, that can't be right. That's got to be bad media. That's got to be bad publicity. And then you look into it, you're like, oh my gosh. But that's because I'm looking at it from the lens of being a Tulsa police officer and the training that we receive and the policies that we have and the practices that we have. And so I finally have learned over 19 years to understand that I have a blessing in the fact that I am a Tulsa police officer, that men and women came before me that have made sure that we didn't look at this as a job. We didn't look at this as a rough raiding, militaristic thing. We looked at it as a profession. We looked at it as a service-oriented profession to serve you all, to serve all parts of Tulsa, and to make sure we did it as best as we could. And if we're doing something today, to constantly say, is that the best way we should be doing it? Is there anybody else doing it better that we could grab a little bit of nuggets from and spin it and make it even better? So I'm the training director for the Tulsa Police Department. I run all training for not just the recruits, but also for ongoing training for everyone in the police department. I'm also responsible for recruitment, which I don't know, has everybody heard the recruitment crisis in policing right now? It is brutal. And although a lot of it has to deal with issues related to George Floyd in 2020, a lot of it now simply has to deal with a new future that we are all living in post-pandemic, the expectations of what work looks like in America now. So I'm going to cover recruitment, I'm going to cover training, I'm going to cover some firearm aspects that I think are very pertinent to everyone here in Tulsa, and also cover some issues related to homelessness, and then make sure that you all also understand, you're going to hear me talk about kind of community policing through all that, because community policing is not an aspect of policing. It's woven in and peppered throughout everything that we do as Tulsa police officers. And so if you'll, and I'll take a sidestep real quick, if you see that officer who's playing a pickup game or whatever with some kids or whatever at a park, right? That's community engagement. That's a piece of community policing. When you see someone who is doing that, that's not the only form of community policing. Because if so, then the homicide detective that's killing himself or killing herself trying to catch the homicide suspect, and they're getting no sleep, well then, if they're not playing that, then what are they doing? Well, they're absolutely doing community policing, because they're establishing relationships on those calls to make sure that those who are going to talk to them trust them, that they're going to protect their home later. And so every piece of community policing is woven into every job that we do. So first off, recruitment. It's awful. So it's the first time I've been assigned something. So I raised my hand. It was, I got back from FBI National Academy in late March of 2022. Recruitment crisis was at its full-on horribleness. And I get back, and we all know the chief's getting ready to do some transfers. And I go, you know what? I love taking hard jobs. I'll raise my hand. Send me to the academy. Let's do this. And it's the first time I've asked to do a hard job, and it's not just easily overcome by hard work, because there's so many external forces that I can't necessarily change. So I'm having to navigate around that, and I have a phenomenal crew of folks that are working equally as hard with me at that. And also, what we've talked about with all of our officers is that it's kind of like any great organization. It's not left up to your 2 official recruiters. It's not left up to the 4 folks in the communications office. It's the fact that it's on everybody within the organization to try to recruit, right? And so the biggest thing I'll tell you is that we're doing all the things. We've actually even been evaluated by professional recruiting companies, since we don't pretend to know it all. But every step of the way, they're like, hey, have you thought of this? Yeah, we do that. Okay, well, how about this? Yep, no, we looked into all that. We do all those things. And again, it's because you have a college-educated law enforcement department. And it's because of that we are on the cutting edge of everything that we do. And so have they offered some good tweaks to us? Absolutely. And we take those tweaks and we do it. But one of the biggest things, and I know it's circulated in opinion articles and editorials in the Tulsa World, I know that it's talked about sometimes at city council hearings and everything else, is why does the Tulsa Police Department continue to require a college degree when you're in such a staffing crisis? And I can tell you this, that there's 2 pieces to that. One is the college degree may not make a difference for that one person who doesn't have a college degree that we could pick up. But if we drop that standard, what matters is when you have a workforce that isn't college educated, and now it starts to pepper into greater uses of force, greater corruption issues, bigger things like that. And that's why when you have an entire department of college education, you start to see the benefit of that. And we see, anybody see, it was probably 6 months now. What are we, January? And probably closer to a year at this point. Anybody see the Memphis event that occurred? So there was a unit in the Memphis Police Department. It was somewhere between 6 months to a year ago. Time flies. And these officers were assigned to like a street crimes unit, so kind of a fast-paced unit trying to address street-level crime. And they stop a guy, they chase him down, they get mad at him, they literally beat him to death, and he ends up dying. And they went back and looked at the officers who were assigned to that unit. It was directly related to the hiring of about 2 to 3 years prior to that, in which Memphis PD intentionally dropped their standards to increase their hires, and those folks were directly related. Drug offenses that they, like felony offenses that they overlooked because they were more concerned about numbers than the quality and the outcomes of what that looks like years later. And our chief has done a great job standing in front of other chiefs of, hey, guys, gals, we are getting ready to have another crisis if you keep hiring for numbers, because whatever happens in whatever other city, yeah, the Tulsa Police Department might not have that crisis, but we're all affected by it because we're that profession. George Floyd didn't happen in Tulsa, but we all got affected of it as a profession because I wear the uniform of that profession. And so he's railing at a national level to the chiefs to watch that, and we're trying to educate and try to encourage people here in Tulsa to understand why we don't want to drop our standards here in Tulsa, so that you all continue to have a very high-performing police department. Are we going to make mistakes? We're absolutely going to make mistakes. don't continue. I don't pretend to stand up here and tell you that we're perfect. We're human beings. But when you compare other agencies, it's wildly different. The training piece, so once we recruit, then we come into an academy. And the great thing is that in Tulsa, we get to run our own academy. There are states that, there are cities, large cities, including Seattle Police Department, who pretends to be a very progressive city and organization. Seattle doesn't get to control their own police academy. They have to send all of their officers to a state academy. That state academy is roughly 700 hours. The Tulsa Police Academy is 1,100 hours. The state academy in Oklahoma is 600 hours. So we have almost double the amount of training as your rookie officers coming out into the streets than what the state of Oklahoma requires. Mental health training coming out of the academy, which is a huge aspect of what we deal with on a daily basis. Not just with people who are homeless on the street, but just on day-to-day calls. There's so many different pieces of mental health. State requirements are 6 hours. We offer 60 hours, we require 60 hours of mental health training in the academy before you can even walk out onto the streets. And then we continue to refresh and update that as well. De-escalation's a big piece, right? So I'm going to equate de-escalation to an athlete in training. So de-escalation, we want someone, if Ken's in distress, you want me to be able to get Ken to relax, get me to possibly get him into custody without having to use force, hopefully definitely without having to use deadly force, without all kinds of different things, right? Well, let's equate that to Ken's a track star. And I want Ken, at some point I'm sure Ken was a track star. And I want Ken to run faster, right? He's my 100-yard dasher guy, and I want him to run faster. Well, I'm not going to tell Ken, okay, hey, Ken, I'm going to have you just do 20 100-yard sprints every day. That's not going to get Ken to go faster. So getting someone to be able to get better at de-escalating Ken isn't going to be, hey, just keep talking. Keep talking. There's other pieces of de-escalation training that surround that, just like there's other pieces of a track star that surround that. We're going to look at Ken's diet. Is he eating the best he can to be ready to run as fast as he can on game day? Is he doing strength training so that his muscles are actually growing and getting stronger so that when he does run and get faster? So those are all the things that go around de-escalation. I say that because either directly or indirectly related training in our police academy of 1,100 hours, about 320 hours is directly or indirectly related to de-escalation training. And what I'll talk to you about in regards to indirectly related is we can all agree that Tulsa is a diverse community, and we're actually stronger because we are diverse. Well, I grew up in a home, in a small group, just like we all kind of honestly do, unless we intentionally reach out and do that. And there's a lot of cultures that I just don't understand. And so we have to expose people to those cultures so that when you walk in, and if someone is yelling really loud, they're not mad at you. This is the cultural aspect of that. So now you know how to relax and know that they're not mad at you, they're not getting ready to attack you. Another thing too is, as police officers, if you're a really good police officer, you study liars. You know exactly when people are lying to you. And when someone looks down and they answer, oh yeah, I mean, all of us that, we're picturing our kids and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm sure that's the truth, right? The thing is that, and I say that because the largest now minority population in the city of Tulsa is the Hispanic population. However, in a sign of respect and authority, Hispanics and Latinos will look down out of a sign of respect and authority. They're not lying. And so it's that kind of education. However, if de-escalation is in play and I didn't teach you that, then you're going to ramp up and go, why are you lying to me? Instead of realizing, okay, this is a sign of respect out of a culture, so I need to continue to talk and work through this. So there's so many different pieces of de-escalation training besides just talking to someone. Just like a track star, besides just running, there's so many different pieces. I can go on and on. I love training. I've never been assigned to the academy. It's one of the reasons, though, that I did want to raise my hand and kind of understand it. And I could go on and on about it. But just know that your Tulsa police officers are beyond better trained than the entire country. And I don't sell that short. I've been around the country. I've been to FBI National Academy. I've been to other national training conferences and other groups. I've talked to other people, and it's shocking how awesome we are. And I hope you all, when you are done, walk out of here extremely proud about your police department, and know that it's because of your expectations of us that's why we challenge ourselves. Because you don't set low expectations. You set high expectations for us, and we want to meet those for you. So I do appreciate the fact that you expect a lot out of your police department. Please definitely ask questions about any and all this. I'm trying to hit all that before I get to it. I'm going to try to be done here in about 10 minutes, because I have found that anywhere I go, I can try to guess at what everybody wants to know about policing, but I'll never get close, so I'm going to leave plenty of time for that. Real quick, I'm going to hit firearms. So I talked about the Hispanic and Latino aspect, right, and what we cover in the academy. So that's a piece of our community relations piece. Some police departments, they have a police academy, okay, then they have a separate just community relations academy. Well, that is telling you that one is not the same. And so we pepper in our community policing training, our community relations, engagement, all that into our academy, so that the new officers understand that you are a piece of the community and the community is a piece of you. There's no separation to that. We have somewhere around 51 hours of directly related to community relations and community cultural competency training that's peppered throughout the academy. We even have our rookie officers go out and do community engagement pieces with, I actually just had my officers right before Christmas. We partnered with a Hispanic and Latino organization called Council for Safe Neighborhoods. There was an event at St. Francis Xavier, if any of y'all know that. It's at like First in Lewis. It was great, served thousands of kids, lots of toys. It was a wonderful event. But those are the things we get people involved with in the academy, so that they see it's an aspect of their job, not just, oh, we got to go do this thing. So, firearms. I don't want to get into a discussion of whether or not constitutional carry is the correct or non-correct decision. I can offer this, though. People are carelessly carrying their firearms in Tulsa. So if you want to carry a firearm, awesome. You need to do so in a manner in which doesn't allow for it to easily get stolen. We have so many firearms being stolen on the streets of Tulsa right now, it's insane. In fact, and so people will, the easiest way, you know, all those stickers that say no firearms welcome inside here, right? Well, great, I'm a criminal. I'm now going to go ahead and troll the parking lots of all those businesses, because I'm pretty sure people who carry those firearms go like, oh, well, I can't take it in, so I'm going to leave it out in my car in an unlocked box, and all I have to do now is break into your car, steal your gun. Now I've got a gun. The other thing too is people are targeting cars that most likely have a gun. So we had a rash of car break-ins on 71st along all those restaurants of, guess what, jacked up trucks. Because people assumed, you know what, bet that guy's got a gun, and sure enough, they had a rash of them and they stole a whole bunch of guns. So if we're going to carry fire, and make no mistake, when people steal guns, they're doing it because they need a gun to hurt people. So if we're going to carry firearms in Oklahoma, people need to do so in a much more protective manner. And I'll tell you this. This is the only insight I'll give you into regards to open carry, conceal, whatever. Other than being in uniform, I've never carried open. I don't want anybody to know I've got one. Because if I'm carrying open and someone is bent on doing violence, who do you think the very first person they're going to be focused on if they're bent on doing violence? Versus if I'm carrying concealed, I have a chance. So that's just my thought in regards to open and carry, and not saying one way or the other, just my thoughts. Last, homelessness, right? So homelessness is a significant crisis, I would say, in America. But I wanted to talk about what we mean in law enforcement when we're talking about homelessness, and what others sometimes try to, I think, misdirect in regards to when they're talking about homelessness. Okay, so sliding scale of homelessness. Tried to make it bigger as I realized that there's people way back there that didn't catch that. So that's the growing size of those, yeah. Yeah, that's true. So who here talks about, the family who lost their job, right? And now they're immediately homeless. The family who got evicted because they couldn't pay a month rent because they got a speeding ticket or something like that, right? Everybody knows about that, right? That is not what law enforcement's talking about, and that's usually everything. This is the onset of homelessness. All those things you just talked about, they can immediately receive services, and they take them. All they have to do is raise their hand, and this church including, I'm sure. I know I've been friends with and also partners in work with Apostle Sharon Cosby, for anybody who's worked with her out of this church of In the Spirit. She runs a homeless shelter down at 10th and Garnett, but I think this church also kind of adopts her and works with her on homeless issues. But anytime these folks, there are thousands of agencies within inside of Tulsa that are ready to jump at the bit. Then you're talking about down here, we're starting to get dicey on whether or not we're going to be able to get those folks. This is going to be much more difficult. You're going to have to get some more service providers involved. You might have to get some the domestic violence intervention shelter involved, all kinds of different runaways from homes. You're going to have to get some more service providers involved. Again, not what we're talking about. When law enforcement talks about homelessness, we're talking about down here. We're talking about people who have been chronically homeless for years. We are not talking about anybody up here. So when we talk about homeless and someone tries to tell us that we're criminalizing the homeless, they just lost their job. Nope, that's not what we're talking about at all. We are talking about the people who've been on the streets for years that offered services over and over and over and over again and are not taking them. Now, can you say they have mental health crisis and that they're addicted? Absolutely. The problem is, though, is that they have to be held accountable just like me and you have to be held accountable as well when laws are broken. Because when laws are broken and they're not held accountable, like us, then we see Seattle, Portland, downtown LA, and it creates environments in which it becomes more and more unsafe in larger and larger areas. Police want people to get help who are down here as well. But sometimes, I talked to a priest one time. Forgiveness, he told me one time, I thought it was pretty interesting. Forgiveness starts with accountability. So nobody's mad at these folks, but accountability sometimes has to happen in order for them to get services. Sometimes, the old adage, you have to hit rock bottom sometimes. This is what we're talking about. Nobody's mad at them, but do you know we get more calls from the citizens of Tulsa? I ran Mingo Valley Division, which is everything east of Sheridan, south of 244, all of patrol. I got very few calls from everyone living in that entire area, so 1/3 of the city, about violent crime, and most of it had to deal with this, about citizens irate that people were setting up camps on their property, breaking into their homes at night. They were just frustrated of what do we do? And that's what I'm talking about is you can't set up a camp on someone's property and not be held accountable. You can't break into someone's property and not be held accountable and just wash it away and say, well, they have a mental health problem. That's fine. Let's hold them accountable, and then there's services that are available. There's special service dockets. There's all kinds of things, and those are the ways in which we can still help. But anytime you hear about this, we're not talking about that from law enforcement. We're talking about people who are not willing to raise their hand anymore and who are now, again, the biggest difference, who are now breaking the law, and you all expect to have them be held accountable just as you would expect to be held accountable yourself. So that was my quick little tutorial of all that. Perfect. So with that, I meant to cover technology too, because I will tell you that Tulsa police have had a technology revolution over the last 3 years. The chief has done a really great job at finally getting us caught up to the 21st century. We went over a decade without really getting any increase in what our technology was, and it had us way behind. If you can picture, and I'll wrap this up in 1 minute. If you can picture the downward trend of violent crime across this country, but here in Tulsa too, in the 90s. Law enforcement did a great job locking up a whole bunch of people. The problem was that it was a broadsword approach. So the only way we could do this was we knew violence was happening in this neighborhood. So here's the broadsword. We're just going to go into the neighborhood with a whole lot of folks. And sorry if you're in the wake of that. Tough. We arrested the folks you wanted us to arrest. What's the problem? We lowered the crime. What's the problem? The problem was we alienated the neighborhoods who wanted us to help them the most. So what's really been awesome is that technology has helped us laser focus who we are on, who we need to focus on, instead of everybody in that neighborhood is now at risk. So we use, if a shooting happens, shell casings get picked up, and we get to start tracking those firearms of where they come. And so if someone gets caught with that gun 6 months from now, boom, it hits that was the gun used in the homicide, and we can start doing backtracking of interviews of, hey, how'd you acquire that gun? The flock cameras, we have caught so many violent criminals from those flock cameras, those license plate readers. Burglaries that happen in your neighborhoods, maybe 1 or 2 happen instead of 20 because the one burglary gets reported, boom, we go backwards. Okay, this time someone saw a red truck, we can put that in a license plate reader. Yep, there's the red truck, that's the license plate, and we meet, and because they're prolific offenders. And I'm going to get this wrong because all statistics are slightly off, but I'm pretty close. Like 60% of all crime is done by the majority of folks. So I mean, that's why we're focused on what I'm saying is being laser focused can significantly reduce that crime instead of having to just go out and obliterate the relationships between the police department and neighborhoods. So technology's really done a great job, and the chief's done a great job getting us there. So with that was a lot of info, but I will open it to questions.
So the second part of this is we're test driving today the role of the moderator, and this came out of the November session that we had where we said what we wanted. And what we determined is that many of the questions weren't heard by the whole class because we weren't using the microphone, and that the questions were not making it onto the tape, which sort of reduced the effectiveness. Now, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but I'm graded on how well this works. And so I don't like to get bad grades because I always got them in school. So we'll just raise our hand with questions, and I'll come around with the microphone. And you know, I should have acknowledged that Pat's grandfather, or your father was our chief of police in what years?
What year? Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So what years were that?
That's your grandfather? Your father. So her father is actually who also nationally invented the yield sign. It was invented here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's actually also the reason that so many patches resemble a yield sign, but Tulsa's definitely is because of, I think it was Captain Clinton Riggs is what he retired, yeah. Chief Riggs said that, yeah. Okay, awesome. Very cool.
Wasn't it under his leadership that it was required to have a college education?
So the college education requirements started for the entire police department in 1997. But education began to have a conversation about that years and years and years before that. Yes.
So Major, we've got a question for you here.
Excellent.
What's the total number of policemen that we have in Tulsa, and how many do you think we need to do the job that we would really like to do ideally?
So we are authorized to have 943 officers. We're down to 800. And that is, we were on a massive hiring increase to try to get that prior to 2020. We're probably down 60 officers since about 2020, 2021, and that's significant. It doesn't allow for us to engage as much. It doesn't allow us to investigate some of the smaller crimes as much. And even though we can say that it's a smaller crime, it's still the worst thing that's happened to someone. And it's just, so any small amount of reduction, it causes ripple effects throughout the department. So that's where we're at in regards to numbers. Yes, sir.
First, I'd like to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Second, I'd like to ask your personal opinion of the McGirt decision.
It makes the life of a Tulsa police officer's job a nightmare. So, and here's the reason. Whoop. Besides having to go through like a multi-page document to figure out where to do and what to do, the problem is that there are people being victimized, that there's no results being had. And as a Tulsa police officer, it's frustrating to watch suspects go free on the streets of Tulsa because of all this.
So I think my question preceded hers. Do we have an issue where we need to know our judges better in order to keep criminals locked up and not back out on the street? How can we, when we go to vote, I don't remember it saying whether those judges are of one party or of the other, and how can we know that in order to support you and support your efforts and get the results that we're all needing?
Yeah, absolutely. Judges have a huge impact on the criminal justice system, especially at the front end, on what they can exercise discretion on. And I don't know what's happened And I would definitely say make sure. Now, there's, again, looking nationally versus here, nationally, there's some horror stories of certain jurisdictions that community and law enforcement are doing a great job getting the right people off the street, and then they're let go. So to make sure that never happens here, I think it's always great to be informed about who your judges are and what they're doing in regards to people who are arrested. Yes.
My mission kind of is the homelessness. I live off 31st and Sheridan, and there's certainly some chronic around there. I visited with a homeless man in Big Lots, and he was choosing to stay in that area. I mentioned downtown, services, food, etc. And he said there were too many homelessness people down there. He did not want to go. But as individuals, I hand out peanut butter sandwiches. But other than that, when do we call for a wellness check, or what can we do as individuals to help?
Yeah, so there's several different things that can be done, because I agree with you. I mean, even my kids were driving down the street and they want to know what can we do to help. One is, and in no way am I ever saying, because I do it myself, in no way am I ever saying don't feed the homeless, don't give water to the homeless. I mean, that's in complete contrast as a Christian as to what God wants us to do. But at the same time, no services will ever be taken if all needs that are somewhat wanted are being completely met at that location. And so the worst thing I think that can be done is handing out money. So I'm not going to knock someone for food and drink. You're looking at a fellow human being and recognizing God in them. But what can be done is, it depends on what they're doing. If it is a crime, it is 911. If it's hey, I think there's a lot of littering going on over here. I'm not sure what's happening. I think I saw a tent over here. You can call cities 311. If the city partners with Housing Solutions, and so if you think that someone needs some outreach and might receive it, you can contact Housing Solutions. Trying to think of some of the others. If you think that there's someone just in mental health crisis, like they're standing there and just kind of yelling at themselves, and we've all seen that, I think the number's 988 now is the new updated number. Instead of 911, you can call 988. And so that's the trickiness, right? Is there's all kinds of different pieces of that homeless aspect that someone's got a piece of that pie. So I hope that helps a little.
Okay, some more questions right over here.
I've heard over the years that Tulsa has a pretty darn high crime rate. Is that true? And if it is, do you know what the main cause of that is?
So we have historically, we've had a high violent crime rate. And I can tell you right now that is down pretty significantly over the last year, and I really would, besides the hard work of our officers, it is that technology helping us focus on those prolific folks. But what I can also tell people is that when you hear about violent crime, even though you might not hear the particulars on the news because we can't necessarily say the particulars, most of the people, not all, there's sometimes innocent folks caught in a crossfire or something. Most of the time, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing in life, you're not subject to that violent crime that is occurring. In regards to cause, I would say it's cause in regards to what happens everywhere of what causes violent crime is socioeconomic plight of groups, lower education, and so those are the driving factors of that. But in regards to violent crime. So you talk about Philadelphia, you talk about Baltimore, you're having national stories of like Washington D.C. House representatives being victims of armed robbery, students at UPenn getting carjacked. That's not happening here. The violent crime is still associated with it's either relational. I knew my offender, or it's gang or drug related. It's not, for the most part, random citizens being victim of violent crime.
So Mark, while I'm walking around here, in the pockets of high crime, how do you see the churches in those areas? Are they an assist to you, or are they an obstructionist to you?
Most of the time, the churches are really great resources in those areas of high crime, and they try to do their best. But oftentimes what you have to do is you have to focus on the front end. Once you are a hardened individual who's in their late teens and early 20s who is full-blown into drug and gangs, a church is going to be one in 10,000 in regards to their luckiness and their success of trying to scoop someone. That's where the church plays. The church, parks, everything plays a huge role on the front end of providing outlets of kids to not get sucked into that as they grow older.
I'm a graduate of the Tulsa Citizens Police Academy.
Awesome.
Back in the 90s.
Okay, cool.
And after that experience, I said, every person should go through this because you have such a better understanding of what you all do. Do they still have that?
We do. We're actually still
Okay.
looking. So she was talking about Citizens Police Academy. It's 13 weeks long. It's one night a week on Tuesdays. It's about 3 hours, give or take. Sometimes it's a little shorter. And you get a lot of experiences. You get to talk to, if anybody watches the first 48, Jason White, detective, comes out and chats with you. You get hands-on experience of different things. I think range, bomb, some different canine, definitely. And it really does give you an even broader understanding of your police department. So if you're interested, the next classes start in February, so we're still taking applications right now.
Two things. First, are you and Matt twins?
So Matt's my uncle. He's my dad's youngest brother.
Okay.
But significantly youngest brother. So.
Okay. The other thing is, these cars that you see running around with tinted windows, I thought that was illegal. And I think that'd be so scary for a police officer to stop a car with dark windows, walk up.
There are some laws, I dealt with this a lot when I worked gangs. There are some laws that are somewhat surround window tinting. They're very hard to enforce and address. And so really it comes from a tactics aspect of how you approach a car that's so tinted out that you have no clue. So really what you end up doing is you end up using certain tactics to basically throw them off so that they don't know which window you're coming up on, or so that, some people, when officers ask them to roll actually any car, when you're asked to roll your window down, besides just because I need to talk to you, it's an officer safety issue so that I can begin to look into the car. So.
In terms of recruiting, do you have any luck with the military, specifically military police people coming out joining the Tulsa Police Department?
So we go to, I'm going to pitch on this real quick. We go to several bases because we got several large bases around Tulsa, and we get in with their career counselors. And as they're exiting, not always exiting, but as they're exiting, we usually transition them into the academy. And the other great thing is, too, we've worked with, I won't go that way. So we have worked with several universities as the first ever agency that we've ever heard of in the country that got our academy accredited to be the last piece of a college education. Northeastern State, New Mexico State University, Oklahoma State University. So if you don't have your college degree, that's the other thing. People hit us. Well, you know what? You're intentionally excluding people who can't achieve a college degree. Nope. If you're in Tulsa and you financially can't get a college degree, TCC has the capability to get you up to an associate's. We can get you easily that third year, but now that we can get you scholarships for that third year, and your fourth year will be spent in the academy for 6 months being paid, and at the end, you will walk out a Tulsa police officer and a college graduate. So, and we offer that to Veterans Affairs counselors constantly.
I just have a question about, do your officers carry iPads in their car so that when they connect with someone they think has a mental health issue, that they can connect to some help immediately?
So there are some units that have those iPads, but what's great is we all have laptops in our cars. And we used to have to connect with just what I would describe as like a mobile Wi-Fi system or whatever. We've gotten away from those, and we all carry cell phones that have hotspots. And so now, yes, when our officers are on a call, they can type that in, dial in, and see if a clinician or somebody needs to talk with someone, or a domestic violence intervention person needs to talk with someone. So yeah, they now have the capability to right then and there try to connect someone.
I would like to share with you a scenario that happened New Year's Eve here in the community behind 51st and Sheridan, behind
Behind the farm?
Quick Trip and the post office.
Oh, okay.
In that
Yep.
area. It was a homeless woman going from door to door. And it so happened that she knocked on a door to our friend, who opened the door and let her in. And a neighbor had seen this on her camera, that it showed up that he had let her in. So she called a neighbor, a male fan, to go over there and see what was going on. Thank goodness. Had they called the police, how would the police have responded to that situation?
So if they had called the police, and are you saying the neighbors called the police on the fact that the woman went into that house?
No, she called a neighbor.
No, I know. Or are you saying that the person who finally the homeless person knocks on their door and they go, no, we don't want you, and call the police?
No, we did not call the police.
No, I know. Who are you asking me the scenario? Is it the person?
If the owner of the home had called the police.
Okay, so.
Or she was in his house.
Yeah, absolutely. So if the owner of the home calls, then it needs to be 911. But if there's no crime, it could IMSA might roll on it, just to see why she's roaming and see if she's okay. But two, also, depending on the priorities going on in the city, if it's New Year's Eve, random homeless person wandering the streets is going to be a low priority compared to what's going on the streets on New Year's Eve. But eventually we may get to there. What I will say is, don't open the door. Speak always through the door and just have that conversation and tell people. That's one quick thing. If you have kids who have kids, or you're taking care of your grandkids and they're finally of age to stay at home, no longer should you tell people to not answer the door. It should always be a verbal acknowledgement through the door of a stranger coming to the door. 12-year-old. Yes? Oh, hey, I just need to. No, I'm sorry, we don't want any. Well, is your mom home? They're asleep. I need you to go away. Well, no, okay. So I've told my kids, now they're no longer listening to your orders, so you need to become concerned and start adding to it. Okay, well, I'm going to call 911 if you don't leave. If they don't leave, now it's a 911 call. If they leave, now it's a call to me. But the reason you affirmatively answer through the door is because most criminals don't want to run into someone. They want the easy money, the easy property, the easy whatever. And when you don't answer, They're going to think that no one's home. They're going to walk around to the back, kick in your back door, steal what they want, and leave. Only they're now going to run into you because you didn't verbally acknowledge through the door, and that's going to get really bad because they may run off or they may attack you. They didn't plan on attacking you if you had just verbally acknowledged through the door, but now they're in your home, and we don't know. So I think we got time for probably 2 more questions.
One more, right here.
Okay.
I think all of us have observed the prolific skunk pot shops on 3 out of 4 corners at about every intersection in Tulsa. And it's very common to smell skunk when you stop your car. I have observed kids in the car with pot smoke coming out of the car. What are police officers doing to handle this? Because I don't think you have a test to find out if someone is under the influence of marijuana.
Yeah, so driving under the influence of marijuana is very difficult. So I used to be over all things narcotics in the entire city. And so driving under the influence of marijuana is a significantly difficult test in regards to whether or not they're high now or high because they smoked 6 hours ago. Now, you can tell more significantly if they're bloodshot eyes and everything, just like if you were drunk or high on anything. The other problem, too, in regards to pot stores being on every corner is the way in which 780 was written and sold to the public. It was written by people from outside the state trying to get businesses started up here so that they could fleece the state, make money, and not care about the rest of us Oklahomans who now have to deal with all that. And so what I would say is, as voters, always make sure what's being told to you in regards to drug or crime laws that are, oh no, it's for criminal justice reform or whatever. You really need to check into that and who's selling that.
So we'll thank Mark for being here this morning. I'd also like to thank you guys for helping me close one of my activity rings today. And thank you for your participation. Mark, thank you for
Thank you.
time.